Hi there, this is Jem Elmar of Jem and Spoon. I'm a DJ and producer, and you're listening to the Liverpool Connection Podcast about music and football episodes. Hope you enjoy it.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Liverpool Connection Podcast. I'm your host Daz. This is my football and music episode where I bring on a musician to talk about football and music. I have musicians on that aren't into football or they've seen a football, so that's good enough for me. But today I've got an absolute legend that I am so chuffed to have on. We'll get into the music side a little bit later. We'll talk a bit of football in the beginning, but it's Rolf Elmer, better known as Jem Elmar, and better known as part of Jem and Spoon. Had such legendary tracks out. And like I said, we'll get into that in a little bit. Rolf, again, welcome. I know we had a few issues last time, but you're back and we're ready to go.
Yes, I'm ready. So let's go ahead and let's see that the network is stable this time.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah. So, you know, we were talking about, you. Obviously, you're based in Frankfurt. You're not a massive football fan, but you do like football.
Yes.
We were actually, Frankfurt are doing really well this season, which, I'm sure some of your mates like Dag really, really happy with. And because obviously he's a massive diehard Frankfurt supporter.
Definitely. Yeah. And today we have from the FA tournament, a game against Leipzig, and hope it's going to be well. Leipzig has a bit of trouble, this time, and I think the last 6 games they never, quarreling a little bit with their performance, which is a bit unusual for Leipzig because it was always one of the best teams we had in the Bundesliga. But yeah, Eintracht Frankfurt is on a high at the moment. They have a very good attack, and their style is different from all the other seasons we had before. They're really playing a different style, very like football would be the easiest game to play. And they're so good and they're so fast, and their attacks are so how can I put that? Yes, so on top notch, and so much really hitting the nail on the head, and yeah, they're really, really great. So today we hope we're gonna have another win.
It'd be nice because I've watched some of their games, and like you said, they're very attacking. They've got the Egyptian lad Omar, if I'm saying his last name right, Mamouche.
Yes, Mamouche.
He's up there with our Liverpool lad, Mo Salah.
Yeah.
They've got the most goals and assists out of all the European leagues. And, no wonder so many clubs are looking at him to buy him in the summer.
No wonder, yeah.
That's the thing, when you start to play well, every other club starts to take a look in and wants a piece of the pie. And, to me, I hope he stays with Frankfurt.
Yeah, me too.
Because that you see that with like Erling Haaland that used to play for Leipzig as well. He went to Bundesliga with Dortmund, and then he was knocking them in, and City comes calling. And that's the thing with Premier League teams and with La Liga teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona. You can't really say no to them because the paycheck is much higher than what the Bundesliga are going to pay you.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. And I think, of course, as a football player, you have probably a limited time when you can really, take profit. If I may put that like this, but if a team like, for example, Liverpool or Barcelona is calling, as a football player in this short limited of time where you can have your Oh, sorry. I have forgotten to switch off my phone. Anyway, ignore it. Anyway, what I wanted to say is, of course you have to go for this offer. And sometimes it doesn't pay off because you're probably coming into a team where there's a completely different atmosphere, and you have to get along with other guys, and they probably see you as their opponent, Of course, there's always, like in a team, there's always, like, how can I say, everyone wants to be the best, and if someone new comes in, probably the others don't really like to be disturbed now in their status. And, there's 11 superstars on the grass, playing football, and of course it's a very, how can I put this? It's an organism, that has to work, that has to function in a very short period of time, say in 90 minutes. And if something is not right, some new players coming into play, then it can, be a disadvantage for some, because it doesn't work anymore like it did before. If a player leaves it can either happen if the player leaves the team or comes into the team. It's different. It's a different situation all of a sudden, and there's no guarantee that it works. We had also this instructor from Austria, and he was very successful with Eintracht Frankfurt, and then he went to Mönchengladbach, and everybody was expecting them to be Mönchengladbach as successful as it was like with Eintracht Frankfurt, but it didn't work at all. So this is something that you never know before, and it's always a risk. Of course, you get a bigger paycheck, but that doesn't that your performance will stay the same. So it's always, from my point of view, sometimes it's simply better to stay at the team, to be successful, and to settle your talent, than being thrown into a new game with different people in a different surroundings. Maybe maybe they don't feel comfortable. Like we see with Mbappé at the moment. He was brilliant when he was playing for Paris Saint-Germain, and now he's in Spain, and for some reason it doesn't work the same. You see that this is very, very fragile.
Well, that's why I have a lot of respect for Xabi Alonso, the manager of Leverkusen. Because after Klopp left, told Liverpool he was leaving in January, obviously we were looking for, a top manager. And Alonso's name was, bandied about, and he immediately was like, "No, I'm staying." And I really appreciate that, and I'm sure Leverkusen fans appreciate that, because he did amazing last season with Leverkusen. It's again, Bayern Munich are like the Man City of the Premier League. For season after season after season, Bayern Munich are winning the Bundesliga. Last season, Leverkusen won it, which I'm sure is nice. Even if you're not a Leverkusen supporter, I'm sure everyone was smiling. If you're not, that Bayern Munich got knocked off the top.
Well, I think with Bayern München, it's a great team, of course. And if you love football, you have to love Bayern München in some kind of way, because they're playing great football. But of course, it was a bit too much, It was just year after year after year, and you say, okay, Bayern München again. And now we have a new player in this whole game, and I think that's absolutely brilliant. That there is, the whole Bundesliga takes profit from this, because it's going to be exciting again. And I think, like with every team, to have a constant high level of performance, it's very, very important that the team itself, that the mechanics of the, I don't know how to say that, but that the internal structure of the team is being kept alive, that no one is coming in or someone is leaving, that's always a risk, and it's very good that Alonso said, okay, I'm with this team, and we're gonna we're gonna go forward with this. And like in other sports, it's the same. Like in Formula One, if a driver, that was once successful, goes to a different team and expect that it will go on, success will go on. But, it's a different game in another team, and it may not pay off, it may be going straight down. You never know. So that's always a big risk, I think.
Well, that's the thing, I'm into Formula One as well, and I'm really curious to see how Hamilton does. He's going to McLaren, isn't he, next year, leaving Mercedes?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Mercedes was so very dominant, the last couple of seasons, but now it's Red Bull, and probably, McLaren is a very good team, and I think that's a cool move. And also, he's British, and it's a British team, so I think he will do very well. And he was at McLaren before, I think.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, well, he can't do any worse than the last couple of seasons because. Verstappen has just overtaken like everybody, but it's actually nice to see Lando Norris up there as well, another Brit. I want to go back and talk about like the actual Bundesliga and how fans have a massive say. We talked, in the other day about freezing ticket prices, which I think is. As you said, it's a good and bad thing because, the club wants to make money to pay, wages and to pay for new players, but yet you want everybody to be able to afford to go to the match. What's your take on that?
Yeah, the funny thing is, I think there's nothing better than witness a game when you're really there and hear the sound of the stadium and catch the atmosphere right there. So I think it's very, very important that not only for people with money in the background can witness this, but also just normal people. That I think that's very important to keep football as a popular game for the masses. But the funny thing is that I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, I don't go to the stadium anymore. Ticket prices are too high. I just have an abo, with the TV, with the streaming services, and I pay for this, and I'm at home, and I can I have the replay and everything, and it's just I don't have to freeze in the stadium in the winter, and things like this I hear quite a lot, and I'm a little bit afraid that this will, maybe take over and people are not so really keen to go into the stadium anymore. But I mean, when you look at the games, at Bundesliga, the stadiums are still full, and probably I'm painting this too black, but I hope, that ticket prices for everyone will stay at a normal range, so that people can not only afford tickets, but also are able to buy the tickets, that is not like given away under the hand. And, if you want to go to a football game, you probably realize all of a sudden that you have to buy the ticket like 1 year or half a year in advance. This is crazy. Sometimes you have to say, "Oh, it's a nice Saturday. Just I go for a ticket and get a ticket and go to the stadium."
Yeah, I wish it was like that.
Probably my idea is probably completely naive in these days, but it was before like this, and it was good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, and me and my granddad could just walk up to the stadium and get in. Now tickets are like gold dust and very expensive. And for me, we've got to make sure the next generation of football fans can afford to go and watch these games, especially. Absolutely. I mean, for me, I live in America, but I do go back to Liverpool, and one day I'd like to take my daughters, to the team, and just let them experience it. Whether they like it or not, that's up to them. But it's something I'd like to do, and I think more families should be able to do that. But because ticket prices, especially in the Premier League, are just outrageous. So, I mean, kudos to the Bundesliga for keeping them where they're at. I think it's fantastic. And I also think it's fantastic that fans have more of a say in the Bundesliga. I mean, for Liverpool, we have an organisation called Spirit of Shankly that really questions the ownership when they do put the ticket prices up, or, you know, how many tickets goes to fans. I think that's one thing that's really gets on my nerves, Rolf, too, is like you go to a Champions League final and, you know, it's a 80,000 capacity stadium, but there's only 40 to 50,000 fan tickets, and the other 20, 30 go to corporations who are there not to really watch the football. They're there to get photographs taken of them because, you know, it's you know, an image thing. I think that's wrong. I think all finals, all matches should go to fans.
Absolutely, yes, I think so too. I hear you, and it's not only with football. Since social media became so important for the people to document that they were there. You know, I was there, and make just a few selfies, or maybe, you know, take a short clip. And it's the same with raves. You know, for example, when you go to raves, you know, people are hanging out with their phones all the time, which is okay sometimes, but I think there's so much focused on, you know, letting everyone know, I was there, you know, and look, watch, and how great I look. And the music and the fun is probably, you know, second class at the moment. And this is something that keeps annoying me, to be honest, a little bit, you know. But I was playing at festivals, you know, I was just looking into smartphones. They were just recording everything. And when you watch some people, you know, great shows with great projections, people are just recording it. And then there comes the breakdown and the drop, and they go a little bit for 2 minutes. They go like, oh no, not even 2 minutes, maybe 30 seconds. They go, yeah. And then they continue recording. I think that's a bit, you know, that doesn't hit, you know, the point. I think that's a bit sad, to be honest. You know, just music is just, you know, it's just a side phenomenon. You know, that it's just not all about. When we were going to race, it was all about the music and the celebration, and, you know, dance and the feeling and the atmosphere. Now I think it's just, you know, I was there. see me, please. That's funny.
I 100% agree. You know, I can't imagine DJing or doing a live act and just looking out and just seeing phones straight back at me. You lose the soul. You lose the absolute soul of what you're trying to do. And, you know, it's getting worse. Not just the phones, but then you've got the DJs doing the same thing,
and including me, I have to admit, because, you know, when I play, I'm so much into the music that I completely forget to take photos and clips. So I have nothing for social media, and people always say, you know, you should have taken some pictures. You know, it's very important for social media. But I'm so much into and last time, for example, last Saturday when I played in Hanover, a nice festival. And this time I remembered, okay, I have to take this clip. And for me, this is so terrible to stand there with my smartphone recording as a DJ, recording the audience. But I have to, you know, do it. And this became a big disadvantage, I think, for all this, for the whole atmosphere and everything. And, you know, when I play as a DJ, I want to be 100%, you know, with every set of my body. I want to be cooking and burning for the set to be absolutely top notch, and not worrying about, you know, recording. Sometimes when you have a good stage manager, you can say, please do some photos, please do some clips, and they can do it. But sometimes the material is just simply unusable. The best is to have like a manager or something, tour manager doing all this for this. But not everyone can pay for such a guy, you know, and who's traveling with you, and, you know, only a few, I think they're able to do that. But yeah, it's
crazy to see some of these DJs have like 4 or 5 people that follow them a social media manager, they have 2 cameramen, then they have obviously the tour manager that goes and does the sound check for the person, for the DJ or producer who's doing it. And, you know, they've got that covered. But still, though, just watching some of these videos from these DJs really just make me cringe. I'm like, you should be over those CDJs or turntables and just completely zoned in, and then off to the sides, you know, throwing their hands up in the air, doing the Jesus pose, which is just, I can't tell how much I can't stand that. Yeah. I mean, some of my favorite DJs, Sasha and Digweed, you know, they hone in on their craft. Digweed, I've never seen him dance in my life. I've never seen him throw his hands up in the air. He'll clap a few times. He'll look up a few times. It's 100% focus. And if I'm paying that much money to go watch these amazing DJs, I want them focused. I really do. But yeah, I you know, we start to sound a little bit like old grandpas, you know, because, you know, when we were growing up, there wasn't phones. There were obviously, you know, when we went to raves, you went to either play and sweat or dance and sweat. You didn't care what you look like. You definitely weren't there to take 3-4 hours of video. You were there to hear the music. I think, you know, especially with how America has kind of labeled electronic music as EDM, that's made it a bit cheesy in my book. I don't like that word, because EDM to me is like pop music, a lot of the stuff. But I do think a lot of these kids that are going to these like cheesy, I'd say pop trance acts, will eventually go, I've had enough of that. I need to hear something a bit more underground. And that's what I'm hoping for in the next 5-10 years. They'll get tired of like these massive festivals and start going to clubs. Because that's, for me, that's where it all started, was clubs. And especially in the UK, a lot of the clubs that I've known are starting to close down, which is such a shame. But and same in Germany, same everywhere, you know, the clubs that you grew up with, the clubs that were, you know, it was about the music and that was it. You know, you maybe had some lights here and there, some visuals, but it was all about the music. And it wasn't even about the DJ. It was about the music.
It was coming out of the speakers, right? Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and I do miss that. But I do want to start asking you your musical roots. Like, growing up in your house, what was the music that you were listening to? Like, what was your mum and dad listening to?
Yeah, well, before I come to this, I want to say that for the DJ and the poses and stuff like this, I've been DJing now for only a few years. I think seriously, I started in 2017. And of course, my DJ career is something that is quite new, if I may say it, like, put it like this. And yes, I really love to be absolutely into the music, and I prepare the tracks that I think fit well to each other to make a nice flow. I throw them into a playlist, and then I begin to improvise on stage. But I like also to have the connection, a very close connection to the audience. I think that for me personally, this is very important, and I don't want to be head down. I only for a few moments when you choose the next track, load it into and set up the channel where you will blend in the new track. But then I want to be really with the people, and sometimes I also wave hands and stuff because I can't help it. So I think there's different types of DJs. Some DJs are absolutely brilliant, and they just head down and do their thing, and the music is fabulous. And some DJs are terrible and, just waving their hands and everything. But I think there's also some DJs who are brilliant and, are just, let's say, celebrating with the people, cheering them up and everything. So I think if it's not just like, okay, this DJ is just going for the fame of it or for the effect of it, but if a DJ is also feeling it, and of course, like a conductor, the conductors are also not really giving them the beats, but sometimes they do funny movements like this. And I think this is, if a DJ does something like this, for me, this is absolutely okay. So, and I'm someone who I cannot stand still. I just have to move. I have to, because the music is also affecting me a lot. And I look very much into the public and into the crowd and connect with the people. And I think people acknowledge this very much. And so I think there's a lot of room, a lot of space for different types of performance, I think. And every one of them is okay. If the music is not second class, if the music has to be the first thing always. And so, this is what I wanted to say before. And now coming back to your question, to me, the Belgian techno and the records that were coming from UK, they were very inspiring for me, especially, at the back of that time, one of the main, maybe it was the super main label RNS Records in Ghent. This was the music where all the innovations was coming from, and Renat gathered a lot of fantastic artists like on one label, which I think is absolutely amazing. And I was like super, super hungry to hear this when some new records were coming out, and I tried to analyze everything. I wanted to find out where the sounds were coming from and everything. And at the beginning I didn't know how a 909 was sounding. It sounds very funny, but the snare sound, that I loved the snare sound, and I didn't know where it was coming from. And finally find out, it's a 909, Roland 909. And then it was very hard to get good samples of this machine. And at that time, we had just one sampler, and, at one point it was fully loaded with everything. And you could not load tons of sounds like in these days with the new DAWs. It was just like maybe one S1000 or maybe one emulator, and that was it. And this completely different kind of work. And I was so happy when I had the chance to chop off sounds from some records. It was a lot of work. You have to put the sampler into record mode and get the right spot and truncate the sample, and everything. What we did is now doing more or less automatically. And but the sampling that and not buying perfectly prepared samples like in these days, that is very much key to a very personal sound. And I always try to establish that. And like I said, Belgian records, Belgian techno and UK techno, and of course also Detroit techno, that was very much influencing me. But Mark Spoon and my manager, they were pushing me towards a more commercial kind of sound, and this is why we have now Ride in the Night and other stuff like that. But it began with Stella, which was quite a cool track, I think. It was just coming out of a vibe. There was no idea behind. At that time, also me as a newbie on the scene and didn't really know how to produce music. I was actually learning very much at that time. So I just did music. I just did what I thought was good. And today, in comparison, I always think so much ahead about what to do and everything. And at that time, we were just doing something, and, sometimes it was terrible, sometimes it was good. but it had the spirit.
Well, you're a classically trained guitarist, right?
That's true, yeah, correct.
When did that start? Because was it in your teenage years?
Yeah, it was funny, but because my elder brother, he had friends that had all these Jimi Hendrix records, and when I heard All Along the Watchtower and Voodoo Child, I was electrified and I wanted to play like Jimi Hendrix. And this was I was so under fire. I wanted to play like this and was completely naive. I thought you're just plugging in an electric guitar and would sound like that, which is, of course, stupid. And my father was like, oh, no, electric guitars in my house. No way, no way. And so he said, son, Jimi Hendrix was playing classical guitar before. He had a acoustic guitar, and that was the way he learned to play guitar. And you can't start with electric guitar, trying to avoid, of course, all that noise in his house. And I was naive enough to believe what my father was saying. And actually, it was not 100% wrong, because Jimi Hendrix also started with an acoustic guitar that he got from his father. So there's a little parallel, but I think that's the only parallel with Jimi Hendrix that I have. But it inspired me a lot. And so I was, starting with classical guitar, actually, and I stayed there. Later on, I bought a Marshall stack and, Stratocaster and made a hell of a noise. My poor mother had to go through this, I remember. But so I have two hearts in my chest. And one is like acoustic guitar and the other is electric guitar. And maybe three synthesizers.
Well, where did did you do the guitar on Stella, or is that sampled?
That's sampled, but of course it came out from my guitar background. But it's actually a sample that it's a very common sample from Akai for the S1000. That was a 16-bit sampler back in that time, and which was super advanced, to be honest. Other samplers were 8-bit. And this was 16-bit, which was like, oh, wow, 16-bit. This was like this was paramount, and everything was like, oh, wow, 16-bit, we have to go for 16-bit. And yeah, it was a factory sound called nylon guitar, I think. So it's very common, but it fitted well. So why not using it?
Oh, no, it I was listening to on RNS, Human Resource.
Yeah.
Jay Boland. But when Stella came out, it was definitely something different that I hadn't really heard before, because it was more trancey. And it's a beautiful piece of work. And obviously back in the day, as opposed to now, it's like 9-10 minutes long, which is unheard of now. So it changed my kind of musical thinking. And I was just like, what is this? I need to find out who did it, and I want more of it. And then obviously, that was in 92 it came out. And, you did the Age of Love remix, and I cannot believe you remixed that in 2 days.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is the real good tracks never took more than 2 days. And the not so good tracks, or the stupid tracks, I was working weeks on them and trying to improve them. And that's very funny. If the spirit is there, if the vibe is there, things happen easily. And if there's something like where you have too much sinking mind, too much mind work, then it doesn't work the same way. It's a lot of work to put it right and make the track really sing. But Stella and the Age of Love remix, I think it was a very, very short and very intense affair, and they were finished in 1 or 2 days. I cannot believe it anymore these days that it was really that short, because when I do tracks now, it takes me forever, because you have so much possibilities to adjust everything, the levels and the sound, and you hear it on your AirPods, and while you're in the train back home, and they think, this is too loud, this is too less. I have to bring this more into the foreground or in the background, and this is like forever ongoing work. And at that time we didn't have much options. We just had the mixer, a few instruments, and we said, it's okay, let's record it, and we give it to the record company. Finished. And sometimes this is an advantage. It can go wrong, but I think I'm happy that I can now change so much. If there is a mistake or something that I don't like, I'm happy to correct this until the way I think it's really perfect. And at that time we had to just, because tomorrow, another client was go into the studio. You had to make decisions, just, it sounds good, record it and finish. Give it to the label. That was.
Well, did you and Mark, after you finished both Stella and Age of Love remix, did you think like, we've got something here?
Yeah, we knew that it was, the result was good. But we never thought, of course, that it would last until 35 years later, and people would still love that sound. That's I think just sheer luck, and that we were there at the right time, at the right place, and put the right notes together. And I'm very, very grateful that I was able to be part of this. But of course, we never thought it would take off like this, But actually, Stella was, the catapult for us for Mark's DJ career, and was putting on the same Hall of Fame like CJ Bolland, Aphex Twin, and all the other great artists who were gathered at RNS Records. And I think that made a big difference. This release on RNS Records really is one of the foundations of Jam and Spoon.
No, it just amazing. Now, I know a lot of producers just produce their own music, but then they send them off to an engineer. Do you do the whole thing yourself, the master?
Yeah. At that time, yes. But when I started with my career as a producer, I had a sound engineer at my side, and Norbert was his name. And he was working also for Frank Farian, which had his studio not very far from the place where we recorded. And he was he had a lot of knowledge, and I was always pestering him, asking questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? But he was very supportive and explained. And other sound engineers I worked with as well. So they were open-minded. And sometimes, when the session was over, I stayed there in the studio and was sitting in front of this huge Neve mixer with, 69 channels, 96 channels. And I was looking at those knobs, and I was trying, what is this doing? And I up the whole mix, and the other day the engineer came in, what is this? It sounds like blue. And what did you do, Rolf? And I said, sorry, I was trying to I was trying to improve it. And it was like, oh no, and then we started once again getting the sound right. But this is part of the game, and I learned a lot from this. And then finally I thought, I don't want to get all my keyboards, throw it into the car, and go into the studio and wire everything and assemble everything. And so I want to have a place where everything stays at the same place, where I just open the door, fire up the keyboards and everything, and start working. And this is when I engineered my stuff the way I wanted. And then we had, right in the night, money was coming in, and we bought a little board from Tascam M600 that was, and a very good mixer, for that amount of money. And so this is how Triplematic Fairy Tales 1 and 2, those were the first and with dark, powerful American natives, and the first Dance Trance album was created on this board and in this room, and I engineered everything on my own. There was no sound engineer anymore around because they gave me all the knowledge, and that was very gentle.
Well, what was your first synthesizer that you bought?
My first synthesizer was it's called Teisco X400 or something, or SX400. It was a 4-voice polyphonic synthesizer, and it was a rip-off from Jupiter 4, but not as powerful. But it sounded great, and I was so into this thing, and didn't know anything about filters. I was just turning knobs and trying to find out what they do, and it was amazing. It was, I don't know, I couldn't really carry it. It was so heavy, but I loved it. And it had like 2 choruses, chorus 1 and 2, and the 2 was sounding amazing, but it the noise was coming out there, the hum and the hiss was just unbelievable. But it was a great thing. And the second synthesizer is there in the background, the System 700, but not in this configuration. It was much smaller. There's like the center thing is called main unit, and there was like half of it which has the same like the cabinets here over the right, and it's called laboratory unit. And I had like this oscillator bank, the filter bank, and the laboratory unit. So I had 3 cabinets. And my father had to borrow me the money. I had to, with the promise that I will pay back everything. But he gave me the money to afford that. And, when I paid back half of it, he said, come on, it's okay. So my parents was very supportive. I was lucky bastard, really, to be honest, that they were so much into this and were supporting me that way. And so that was the second one. And with this polyphonic synthesizer and the Roland, I did my first tape compositions. I had a Revox, and I with a ping pong technique. I don't know if you remember this. You could like record something, and that would being recorded on the other channel. And then you could like record something on the free channel. It was only two left and right, 2 channels, and so you could like add on tracks. But the problem was that also the noise became, at one point, it became so overwhelming that it's pretty unusable. But that's the way I started.
Well, what's your favorite piece of equipment?
Oh, I can't really say that. There's a lot of great pieces of equipment that I had. I just bought, you can't see it from here, it's down there in the rack, the Nord Lead 1 rack that I sold a couple of years ago, which was a big mistake, but now I got it back. For example, the Nord Lead 1 has a very, very super characteristic sound that I think is, works on every playback more or less. It's, I don't know if you remember the track Storm, the side project with Mark Spoon, with this hammering sequence. And this was done with the Nord Lead 1, and I couldn't get this sound with any kind of plugin that I own now. I have so many synths in my computer now, and all the VSTs, and none of them was able to come really close to that. So yeah, I think the Nord Lead was very important for Storm. And over there, I also have the Oberheim Expander, which had this fantastic feature to have FM synthesis on the resonance and on the filter. And this is actually the secret to Stella sound, with this funny resonance sound, that's building up and going down, this protuberances, if you want, that was so characteristic for this track. So that was done with the Oberheim, and I couldn't do, to be honest, I think I couldn't do it with any other synth. And of course, System 700, the second part of, when the beats are speeding up at 264 beats, there's this sharp sound that's going up there, and that was done with the System 700. And the bass drum, for example, on Powerful American Natives was also done with a sweeping filter from the System 700 and 2 envelope generators. And yeah, that was, I think, a very unique sound back at that time. It was sampled quite a lot. If I would have a license on this, you probably could have caught me in Miami Beach and, smoking some and having drinks at the beach, being at the pool. But now I'm that's fine.
Do you like working with more with hardware than you do with like the digital side?
I don't really have a preference. The good thing with hardware is that you spontaneously can grab some knobs and you just twist them the way you want. And I think with the VSTs and the AUs, I think you have amazing possibilities. If you look at this guy in the background, this is like a very, very short, a very small round of what's inside a U synthesizer. And I think this is amazing. You can do so much amazing sounds, especially with wavetable synths. And this is something you can't get out of these hardware synths. Actually, some of them, yes, but only the newer ones. The older ones, they just sound analog. They sound like Sawtooth, or just a combination of those different 4 waveforms that basically are in every synthesizer. But now with the wavetables, it's a bit different. With the new keyboards, they are available. They are capable of doing much more modern sounds, if you want.
Yeah, I think like with today's, you look on Beatport and you listen to quite a lot of the music, you can tell it's self-produced. Because, it's so easy nowadays to put your own music out. You don't need a record company. You don't need A&R. You just put it out on Bandcamp. But you can definitely tell that they've had no sound engineer advice because it's so low end. I do get frustrated, because as a DJ, you have to, just like when you used to go in a record store, you'd spend hours upon hours listening to tracks and you'd probably only come away with about 5. And it's the same with Beatport, you go through hundreds of tracks and most very, very badly produced. But my thing is, it's so accessible now, which is good. You do have all the sample packs. It's so easy to make music. And do you get a little frustrated with how much, and I'll say how much shit is put out?
Well, the problem is that you have to find those little nuggets, the golden nuggets in among hundreds and hundreds of tracks that are really mediocre and don't do nothing to me. I think, the mass is the problem, that there's so much masses of tracks out there where you have to go through. And finally, you always end up with tracks that come more or less from the same artist that you loved before. And there's rarely rarely you find a track from an unknown artist that is not so popular, which is really, really good. And I think, it's hard work really to find good tracks for your sets that you really can play with all your passion. Sometimes you get tracks that are just, it doesn't really matter if I play this track or not, because it will not do anything. So I'm always trying to get some tracks that have a certain signature to it, a certain, recognizable element to it. I think back in the days, I don't want to come back into the old days were better, it's not the case, but some things were good, and I think they're a little bit lost right now, because I think it's so easy to make good sounding track these days, because you just go and buy the sounds and buy the templates and throw some things in it, and it will sound all right. But the idea is probably missing. The strong musical or whatever idea you have. So it doesn't have to be like a musical idea. Maybe it's maybe some sound that you have recorded outside, or maybe it's just a voice, just a voice that was talking a short sentence or whatever. And the final and strong idea, that is missing it more than 90% of the tracks that you go through, I think. And back at that time, I think there was also good and bad records, of course, but we always tried to bring something into the music that had at least the capability to be recognized. And I remember when Mark was playing back in the days, there was always, when he played a new record, people were coming up the stage and say, "Oh, what is this? This is great," including myself. And today, when I DJ, I don't hope it's down to me, but rarely people coming up and say, "What is this? This, I've never heard a track like this before. That's great." And the funny thing is always people are coming and asking for the idea of the track when it has a strong musical idea, when it sounds totally different from all the 90% of the stuff that I play in my set. When it's really unique, then people will recognize and then will say, "Oh, wow, what is that?" And this is somehow lost in many, many cases.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think back, again, just going back in the day when you didn't want chain spotters to know what you're playing on vinyl. You used to put the tape over the ID. Obviously now you can just Shazam a song with your phone, and your set that you've probably spent hours and hours trying to find those golden nuggets are suddenly on the internet within 2 hours of you finishing your set. So your secret weapons are not so secret anymore.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's quite easy. The good thing is that some tracks they're not somehow registered at Shazam, so the results are very erratic, which is, I think, fine. But yeah, what can you do about it? I mean, some people were asking me, "Can you send me a playlist?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure, I can do that." And when you see them performing, they perform in a completely different way. And it doesn't work the same way when you play it. So this is still, tracks are available more or less for everyone. But the way a DJ or the way you are sequencing it and present it to the people, when you read the crowd and see, and you can get an idea about what they want. Do they want a bit more fire, or do you have to cool down now a little bit? And when you're able to do that, and you give them the right food, give them the right tracks, then I think everyone can know your playlist. Everyone can maybe have access to all the tracks that you're playing, but they are not still able to get the same result, because it's still, there is a DJ who has to please the people and who has the talent to entertain and give the people what they want.
Well, how do you prepare for a set? Because I keep hearing more and more, especially for big festivals, the pre-recorded set. That's a massive no-no for me. I think it's an easy way out, but part of me is like, because it's the VJ has to get it spot on with what the DJ's playing. I kind of understand that, but how do you prepare? I know you said you put playlists together and then you work from there, but I've just here, not with the DJs like I normally listen to, but some of the other DJs, you hear the same set over and over again from them, and I that's got to get boring. Just playing the hits. I don't understand it. I mean, for me, you want to kind of, and I'm not being too but you want to educate the crowd with new music, or educate the crowd with music that they haven't heard before. Like, I bet you, if you played Stella today for a young crowd, they would be like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is what I mean. I think DJs do need to take more risks. It's an art form. I think that art form is getting a bit lost. I was talking to Timo about it, and he considers himself an artist, as do yourself. And DJs are artists as well, because they can take two pieces of music and make it into like a third piece of music by taking the best parts of those two tracks. And I think that the art of DJing is getting lost a bit with quite a few people. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, because you were asking how do you prepare. Maybe I don't have the typical DJ approach. I'm more approaching from my musician side of it, probably, if you like. I use a record box, of course, because I use the Pioneers, and I throw them into a playlist here, all my new tracks, and they're going to be analyzed. And then the first thing that I like to do is to get the grid really in the pocket. That's the first thing that I know. Okay, this is my reference. When I beat match, that I have a good reference. It's not super important, but it helps. And my idea is when I'm on stage, I don't want to be bothered with something unexpected. I want to have like everything prepared that I can enjoy the moment, enjoy with the people. So less work that I have on stage, the better it is. And so the second thing is much more important. For me at least, I try to analyze the key. And even you have the weirdest techno track, there's always some resonance or whatever, that where you can define a certain pitch. And you can say, oh, this is maybe A flat or maybe D minor or whatever. And then I try to analyze that and set it up that way that I use. Okay, when I play this track, I know this is like in E major or something. And so when I put the tracks together, I always try to find not only the track characteristics that would fit, it's also that have like a good match, that they are a good match when I'm talking about the keys, And the funny thing is sometimes where you think the most, when you have something in D, like as the root key, and you would go to A flat, which is like the tritone. So it's very, very far musically from it. Sometimes those tracks fitting well together, they have like a certain kind of spice. But usually I try to find keys that would work very well together to have not like a bad surprise when you have like harmonies playing from the previous track and the melodies coming from the other track, and you blend it in. And sometimes, when you're not aware, it sounds like bull, when the harmonies doesn't match. And so I want to be, this is something I really try to avoid. It should always sound musical well and make musical sense. And I think people, even though if they don't know anything about music theory, I think people can feel this, that the musical content of the track fits well to each other, and I think people acknowledge this very much. And of course, I don't like pre-recorded sets. I think I never would do that because I think it's simply boring, and you cannot like really react on people's needs. When you have like 2 hours pre-recorded, what can you do? You just press play and then you go like. That's not my way. I think that's boring, and you can put a robot on stage, or a monkey, it's the same. It doesn't really make sense. I mean, if you have like a show with projections and everything, and probably that would make sense. But that's another thing, I don't know if I would go for something like this, because I think. It's the whole show with the picture and the music together. Yeah, well, maybe it's good. But I'm very, maybe I'm old school. I still would like to spontaneously decide what I wanted to play. But there's one point, and that I think maybe is interesting to mention. Armin van Buuren, he once explained how he would do that, because people were accusing him for, you play pre-recorded tracks, and because it fits always with the videos on the screen. And then he decided to explain how he was doing this with 4 DJs, 2 have a time code and the others were playing the music. And they were all connected. So when he would play one track, also the time code would start like being transferred to the VJ. And he had a microphone where he could tell him, I play this and that track next. And so the VJ could prepare this. And when he was blending this in, the VJ would like synchronize the picture to his performance, to the track. And I think that's a very clever idea. Actually, I've never been to a Armin van Buuren performance, so I can't really judge if that works or not. But it sounded very, very clever to do it like this, because you can, on one side you can use the projections and everything, and on the other side you can be still spontaneous. Good idea, I think.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you also about, we've noticed like DJ sets have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. So especially festivals, it's an hour. What is your ideal, like, time-wise set?
I think it should be 2 hours at least. And I love to play longer than that. It's upcoming Saturday. I have a gig in Berlin, where I have the nice opportunity to play 3 hours, which I think is great. I think 3 hours is a very good length. And I'm resident of the infamous Kit Kat Club in Berlin, and I play 5 hours there. And the first shift is 2.5, and then the other DJ takes over 2.5, and then I take over again, also with 2.5. And so I end up with my last set at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I really have presented, I had the chance to present a lot of different music, because also when you start maybe 12:30 or 12:30 a.m. or 0:30 a.m. and you play until 3 a.m. and from 3 a.m. the other guy is playing until 5:30 a.m. and then you play until 8 a.m. You have two totally different people, and you have to react on them, and you have to please them, and you have to find out what kind of people I have in front. And I think this is very, very interesting, and it's fantastic. It's super exciting, and when you find the right tracks and you please them with the music, I think that's the best thing in the world.
I've heard some crazy things about Kit Kat Club.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy things about Kit Kat Club. But actually, when you think it's, they started in the 90s and they moved, I think, 3 times. And now I'm a resident there and play there monthly. And yeah, the concept simply still works. And everything that you hear about Kit Kat Club is untrue and true at the same time. People are telling you the funniest stories about this club, and take 50% off that, and the rest is maybe true. At the end of the day, it's a great club where you can have a great time, and you just go. You easily can go there and just dance, and just celebrate, have drinks, and then you leave. It's. No one would care.
Speak yourself. That's the way it should be,
Yeah.
Every club should be like that. Not a. And
smartphones are strictly forbidden. You're gonna throw out, if you put a smartphone out because of other reasons as well. You say, okay, goodbye. See you. We don't see you again. You're completely off this club. You're on the blacklist. Yeah, it's like that. They're very, very strict, and the people are, they enjoy the music, and it's the best crowd in the world at that club. I can just say that every DJ who has the privilege to perform there, you're lucky bastards.
Timo's a resident as well, right?
Maybe he was, but during my time, I've never seen him there. But, the Kid Club opens on Wednesday, and I think they shut down on Monday evening or something. So probably he was there on another party. I'm playing on Saturdays at the Carnival Bizarre. And I think that's the actual Kit Kat night. And we have people coming from all over the world, from the US, Europe, Australia. We had a lot of people coming from Israel. Now, not so much anymore because of the war, which is really terrible, I think. But a lot of tourists, and because they hear about this, and this international crowd is fantastic. I love it.
What's coming up for you, music-wise?
I just recorded an EP with a guy from Switzerland. His artist name is Audio Clinic, and he's quite successful with a new hard groove sound that's coming up. It's a bit hot at the moment, and we were, I think it took us 4 days this time, if that's interesting. But we have a nice EP, and it's going to be released in March, I think, or February on Tronic, Christian Smith's label. Yeah, so it's a great label. Yeah, and looking forward to that one. And I'm working on an album which is not no fast beats. It's more like a chill album and more of a listening album. I'm actually trying to do that. I don't know if maybe I say delete and put everything into the bin. I don't know, but that's what I'm working on now. And actually today, when our interview is finished, I'm gonna gather some tracks for next Saturday in Berlin for the 3-hour set. And being prepared is, for me, very important. Some other DJs, they just go on stage and they perform well. In my case, I have to be prepared. That's very important for me.
My last question for you, Rolf. Where do you see dance music going in the future?
That's a good question. I have to admit, I don't really know. I think, with the situation that we are now in, it might be that we are losing even more clubs, and so people with a limited budget of what they can spend on clubbing or even not even clubbing, what they can spend on this kind of music that we're doing, is that they probably will always choose and go for the festival instead of the clubbing, because they say, I have all the great DJs there, like in one weekend, and I pay maybe 600, 700 euros for that. But I have them all, I see them all. I have a great show, I have great productions, and it's overwhelming, and it's fantastic. And when they say, I want to go dancing, and they go to some club, and where there's some color lights and maybe a laser, and they think, when the festival was, they had this big show, and wow, now it's just a DJ and some funny lights, and probably they are so pre-programmed from this experience that they don't get the experience of being a clubber. And when they spend like hours in a club and, dancing for hours and getting into this state of, let me put it like state of trance, I'm not talking about styles. It's about the state of mind. I'm talking about the feeling and, being connected with all the people around you on the floor and being connected with the music, with the DJ. This is a certain experience that I was lucky to have in Frankfurt with Dorian Gray and with Mark Spoon DJing, Doug and Sven. They were all fantastic DJs, completely different from each other. But, this was the way I grew up and the way I experienced clubbing. And I think this might not be in favor of what we are experiencing right now. I think this festival thing is more taking over, but maybe like, it's a very dynamic situation. Maybe festivals are not sexy for the people anymore. At one point they laugh, I like to go into clubs. Maybe in 10 years, I don't know. But I hope that, and I think we still have great artists who will do great tracks that we can play. And we have to keep up the good music. That's what I do. We simply have to do our job as good as we can with as much passion as we can have, and make love to the people with our music, if you want to put it like that.
On that note, I'll leave it on that. I'm so happy you came on and spent a little time chatting with me. Like I said, your music kind of changed my trajectory onto what kind of like dance music I liked. I mean, I started with obviously like rave music, hardcore, like jungle,
great,
and then
fantastic,
but more of the trancey side of things came, and then obviously progressive house for me. So you're definitely a part of my musical upbringing. So I really appreciate that. If you want to check out Rolf's music, obviously Spotify, Beatport. Do you have Bandcamp?
No, I don't have a Bandcamp at the moment, but this is one of my to-do list to have a Bandcamp account. I have a Bandcamp account, but just for buying tracks, but not for selling my tracks. So.
Yeah, you're going to have a list. Get a Bandcamp, put more stuff on Instagram.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. This social media.
All-time social media manager.
Yeah, well, I think I'm totally old school. I am afraid, but this social media is sometimes a nightmare for me.
It's for everyone. Everyone that's over like 40 or 50 years old, it's a nightmare. Trust me. I'm the same. I am exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute privilege and honor. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please like, subscribe, put your notifications on, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me, and take good care.